The Judgment and Exile. The grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly stretched impossibly wide, its curved ceiling a transparent marvel that revealed the dance of distant stars and the slow rotation of the nearest nebula. Commander Elena Reeves stood at perfect military attention, her uniform crisp despite the sweat beading at her temples. Beside her, Dr. Sanjay Kapoor, Earth's chief diplomat, maintained a calm facade that belied his racing thoughts. They represented humanity's first official delegation to the interstellar community, a moment their species had dreamed of for centuries. Arrayed before them in a semicircle were the 7 primary members of the Assembly Council. Most alien to human eyes was HFY, a crystalline entity whose faceted body pulsed with internal light that shifted between deep purple and brilliant blue. Beside it floated Mirak, a being composed of what appeared to be liquid metal contained in a gravitational field. The most humanoid counselor, Talus, possessed 6 limbs and skin that seemed to shimmer with an iridescent quality as it moved. Representatives of Earth began HFY, its voice translated through neural interfaces. Elena and Sanjay had reluctantly accepted for this meeting. We have concluded our evaluation of your petition to join the Galactic Assembly. Elena felt the weight of billions of eyes across Earth watching this transmission. Humanity had united as never before when the Assembly probe had arrived in orbit 3 years ago. Ancient conflicts had been set aside in preparation for this moment. Your species presents a unique case, continued Mirak, its liquid form rippling with each syllable. Your technological progress is remarkable, advancing in mere centuries what took other species millennia. Sanjay stepped forward slightly, his diplomatic training evident in his measured response. The Assembly has acknowledged our adaptive capabilities as impressive. We have overcome environmental challenges, disease, and resource limitations. In the past century alone, we eliminated global hunger, developed sustainable energy, and begun healing our planet's ecosystems. The Serpentine Counselor Zyva made a sound that the translator rendered as skeptical laughter. Your achievements are not in question, human. It is the means by which you achieved them. Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing Earth's history, wars, environmental destruction, social upheaval. No species currently in the Assembly has spent more of its recorded history at war with itself, stated Talus, its voice melodic despite the harsh words. Your most significant technological leaps occurred during periods of conflict. Your space exploration began as a competition between rival powers. Even your unified Earth government formed only after the climate crisis nearly destroyed your civilization. Sanjay maintained his composure. Through conflict, we forged cooperation. Our diversity of thought has driven innovation. That is precisely what concerns us, interrupted HFY. Your species advances most rapidly under pressure, through competition, through conflict. Most Assembly species evolve through cooperation, through slow, steady advancement. Elena could no longer remain silent. With respect, counselors, you're condemning us for our resilience, for our drive to overcome obstacles. Isn't that exactly what you would want in an ally? The chamber fell silent at her unexpected interjection. Sanjay shot her a warning glance. Mirak's metallic form pulsed rapidly. Commander Reeves, your psychological profile indicates aggressive tendencies even by human standards. Through the neural interface, we perceive you are already assessing potential weaknesses in our defenses. Elena froze. They were reading her thoughts. HFY's crystalline form brightened. The Council has voted. Earth is classified as a Category Omega civilization, technologically advanced, but culturally unsuitable for integration. A containment boundary will be established at the edge of your solar system. You may develop within those confines, but any attempt to venture beyond will be met with immediate sanction. You're quarantining us? Sanjay asked, his diplomatic mask finally cracking. For how long? Until your species evolves beyond its inherent aggression, Talus stated, based on similar species development patterns, approximately 15,000 years. The Earth delegation erupted in protests. 15,000 years, longer than human civilization had existed. It was a death sentence to humanity's cosmic ambitions. "This is xenophobic prejudice," shouted Dr. Elise Santos, their xenobiologist. "You fear what's different from you. You haven't even given us a chance to prove ourselves." Elena remained silent, her military mind already calculating. The assembly had revealed too much. Their technology, their psychology, their arrogance. She caught the eye of Dr. Nathan Chen, their chief scientist, and saw the same realization there. "The decision is final," Corval declared. "You will be escorted back to Earth. The isolation barrier will be activated within one standard rotation." As enforcement drones surrounded them, Elena leaned close to Sanjay. "They've shown us everything we need," she whispered. "This isn't the end. It's just the beginning." The journey back to Earth was tense. While the diplomats drafted their grim report, Elena convened a secret meeting with key military and scientific personnel in the ship's secure conference room. "They've given us two choices," Elena began without preamble. "Accept extinction through isolation or find another path. A quarantine enforced by ship centuries beyond our technology isn't much of a choice." They showed their hand, Dr. Chen noted, his fingers dancing across a tablet. "FTL travel, advanced materials, energy sources we've only theorized about. More importantly, they revealed their greatest weakness." "Which is?" asked Captain Maya Rodriguez, their pilot. "Most species in the assembly evolved through cooperation rather than competition," Elena explained. "It makes them vulnerable to those who didn't. To us." Dr. Chen leaned forward, understanding dawning. "You're suggesting we violate the quarantine. That would confirm every fear they have about us." "No," Elena said firmly. "I'm suggesting we use what they've given us, a common enemy for all humanity. With this exile, Earth will unite as never before. We'll develop in secret, reverse engineer what we can from the data we've gathered, and prepare." "For what?" Sanjay asked from the doorway. He hadn't been invited but had come anyway. Elena met his gaze unflinchingly. "For the day we return to the stars. On our terms, not theirs." The announcement of Earth's quarantine shocked humanity into unprecedented unity. Ancient rivalries dissolved as nations faced a common threat: irrelevance in the cosmic order. The Terran Advancement Initiative was born, a globally funded project to overcome the assembly restrictions. 5 years after the quarantine, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Nathan Chen stood before the world's assembled leaders in the command center of Pacifica Base. "The assembly made one critical error," he announced, gesturing to the massive engineering project behind him. "They assumed our competitive nature was our weakness. They failed to realize what happens when humans are told they can't do something." On the display screen, a prototype vessel unlike anything Earth had built before hovered in a massive underwater chamber. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chen continued, "I present the TSV Defiance, the first ship of humanity's covered fleet. Incorporating technology reverse-engineered from assembly data, its drive system will allow us to slip past their quarantine undetected." Commander Reeves, now Director of Earth Defense, stepped forward. "Phase 1 of the initiative is complete. We can breach their barrier. Now we begin Phase 2, expansion beyond their knowledge, preparation for the day we challenge their judgment." As the leaders applauded, Elena's gaze met Sanjay's across the room. The diplomat nodded slightly. He had come to understand what she had known from the beginning. The assembly had unwittingly set humanity on the path to becoming exactly what they feared. The quarantine was in place, but Earth's defiance had just begun. 10 years into humanity's exile, the Terran Shadow Fleet had established its first outpost beyond the Sol system. Hidden in the dense asteroid field of a seemingly unremarkable star system, Station Horizon served as the forward operating base for humanity's covert exploration efforts. Elena Reeves, her hair now streaked with gray, stood in the command center of the station, watching as the TSV Pathfinder prepared to depart on another mission. The ship, twice the size of the original Defiance, represented the third generation of human stealth technology. Director, called Lieutenant Commander Daniels, we're receiving an encrypted transmission from the Artemis outpost. Alina's heart raced. Artemis was their most distant installation, established in a system rich with resources, but dangerously close to what they had identified as assembly territory. "Route it to my office," she ordered, striding quickly to the privacy of her quarters. The face that appeared on her screen was that of her son, Marcus Reeves, commander of the Artemis outpost. At 32, he had his mother's intensity and his father's analytical mind. Alina had opposed his assignment to such a remote post, but had been outvoted by the Initiative Council. "Mom," Marcus began, his expression grim, "we've made contact." Alina's breath caught. "Assembly forces." "No," Marcus replied. "Another exiled species. They call themselves the Viridian Collective. And they're not alone. There are others, at least 7 species, all quarantined by the Assembly for various infractions against their precious order." Alina sank into her chair. "This changes everything." "It gets better," Marcus continued. "They've been monitoring Assembly communications. The Council is facing internal pressure. Some members are questioning the quarantine policy as ineffective and wasteful of resources." "They're vulnerable," Alina whispered. Marcus nodded. "And Mom, the Viridians have technology that complements ours. What we've developed in weapons and stealth, they've advanced in shielding and communication. Together, we might actually have a chance." Alina finished his thought. "Hold position. I'm coming to you. And Marcus, don't trust them completely. Not yet." As the transmission ended, Alina leaned back, her mind racing with possibilities. The Assembly had made yet another miscalculation. They had created a common cause among the very species they had deemed too dangerous to include. The exiles were about to become a force to be reckoned with. The reckoning. 20 years after humanity's exile from the galactic community, the landscape of space had changed dramatically, though the Galactic Assembly remained blissfully unaware. In the shadows between their carefully monitored trade routes and outposts lay a growing network of what they would have called dangerous elements. The Exiled Coalition, as it had come to be known, comprised 12 species, each banished by the Assembly for various transgressions against their established order. Together, they had built something unprecedented, an alliance founded not on blind cooperation, but on mutual respect for their differences. Admiral Marcus Reeves stood on the bridge of the Terran flagship Prometheus, a vessel that embodied humanity's unique approach to starship design. Where Assembly ships were elegant and specialized, the Prometheus was modular, adaptable, and bristling with weapon systems disguised as innocuous sensor arrays. "Status report," Marcus called, his voice carrying the authority that 20 years of covert operations had instilled in him. Commander Area Chen, daughter of the late Dr. Nathan Chen, responded promptly. "Coalition fleet is in position, Admiral. The Viridian vessels have engaged their harmonic cloaking fields. Nyx Tauri stealth platforms have deployed to the designated coordinates. Our intrusion countermeasures are active and testing optimal." Marcus nodded, studying the tactical display. The Assembly outpost orbiting Proxima Centauri, ironically, one of humanity's nearest stellar neighbors, had grown into a significant monitoring station over the decades. It served as both the primary enforcement point of Earth's quarantine and a refueling depot for Assembly patrol vessels. Today, it would serve a different purpose. "Open channel to Coalition Command," Marcus ordered. The holographic projector in the center of the bridge activated, displaying the representatives of the Exiled Coalition. Zara Vesh of the Viridians, her translucent skin revealing the complex network of bioluminescent veins beneath. General Kithos of the Nyx Tauri, his exoskeletal armor gleaming under the lights of his own vessel, and 5 others, each representing a species that had found common cause with humanity. "The time has come," Marcus began without preamble. For 20 years, we have prepared for this moment. Today, we not only strike a blow against those who condemned us to extinction, but we also reveal the truth they have desperately hidden from the galactic community. Zarevesh's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with what Marcus had come to recognize as determination. The evidence has been verified by all our species. The Assembly's hypocrisy will be exposed. My stealth teams are in final position, General Cathos added, mandibles clicking. On your command, Admiral Reeves. Marcus looked to the final figure in the projection, his mother, Elena Reeves. Now in her 70s, she had stepped back from active leadership, but remained the Coalition's most respected strategist. Mom, he asked simply. Elena's weathered face broke into a rare smile. Your father would be proud, Marcus. As am I. The Assembly taught us one valuable lesson. Never underestimate those you've cast aside. Execute the operation. Marcus nodded. Coalition fleet, commence Operation Daybreak. Across 12 different star systems simultaneously, precisely targeted strikes disabled Assembly communication relays. Before emergency protocols could activate, Coalition ships decloaked at each location, broadcasting on all frequencies used by Assembly members and their affiliated worlds. On the Prometheus, Marcus stood before the ship's quantum transmitter. Behind him, a wall of evidence, hundreds of thousands of intercepted communications, sensor readings, and covert recordings, stood ready to be broadcast across the galaxy. People of the galactic community, he began, his voice calm and measured. I am Admiral Marcus Reeves of Earth, a world quarantined by your Assembly 20 years ago, for the crime of being too aggressive in our pursuit of progress. He gestured to the data displayed behind him. What you are about to see is evidence of the Assembly Council's systematic exploitation of developing worlds, extraction of resources from quarantined systems, and deliberate suppression of technologies that would threaten their power structure. The broadcast continued, revealing damning evidence of the Assembly's true nature, not benevolent guardians of peace, but manipulative controllers preserving their dominance through deception and force. Images showed Assembly harvester ships stripping resources from worlds whose inhabitants had been kept deliberately ignorant of the wider galaxy. Records revealed how species deemed too competitive were routinely quarantined, not out of concern for galactic stability, but to prevent challenges to the established power hierarchy. We, the Exiled Coalition, do not seek to destroy the Assembly, Marcus continued. We seek to reform it, to create a truly representative body that values diversity of thought and approach. That recognizes strength comes not from enforced homogeneity, but from the synthesis of different perspectives. The Assembly response was swift but disorganized. Their patrol ships converged on the broadcasting coalition vessels, weapons charge. Aboard the Prometheus, Marcus watched as the first Assembly cruiser approached their position at Proxima Centauri. They're hailing us, Commander Chen reported. On screen, Marcus ordered. The face that appeared was familiar to anyone who had studied the Assembly Council. Talus, one of the 7 who had condemned humanity to isolation 2 decades earlier. This violation of quarantine restrictions will not be tolerated, Talus began, its voice carrying the same melodic quality that recordings had captured 20 years ago. Your ships will power down immediately and surrender to Assembly custody. Marcus smiled slightly. Counselor Talus, before you continue threats that you cannot enforce, I suggest you check the status of your fleet. Confusion flickered across the alien's features. You see, Marcus continued, while this conversation has been occupying your attention, Coalition forces have neutralized the weapons systems of every Assembly vessel in this sector. Non-destructively. I might add, we could have destroyed them, but that's not our way. Talus's expression shifted from confusion to alarm as reports presumably confirmed Marcus's claim. Furthermore, Marcus pressed his advantage. Our broadcasts have reached every inhabited world in Assembly space. The truth of your Council's activities is now known to all. Your choice is simple. Engage in genuine dialogue with the Coalition about reforming the Assembly, or face the dissolution of your authority as member worlds withdraw in disgust. You cannot possibly believe, Talus began. We already have commitments from 28 Assembly member worlds to recognize the coalition as legitimate, Marcus interrupted, including 3 founding members of the Assembly itself. They've recognized what you refuse to see, that diversity of approach, even competition when channeled properly, strengthens rather than weakens the galactic community. Silence fell over the communication channel as Talus processed this information. The quarantine directive was never about protecting the galaxy from us, Marcus said more softly. It was about protecting your power from change. But change has come anyway. The question now is whether you will be part of shaping that change, or be swept aside by it. 3 months after what came to be known as the Daybreak Revelation, representatives of the reformed Galactic Conclave gathered on neutral territory, a space station constructed in orbit around a star exactly halfway between Earth and the former Assembly headquarters. Elena Reeves, attending as an advisor to her son, watched with satisfaction as delegates from over 200 worlds mingled in the Great Assembly Hall. Former Assembly members conversed with coalition species, while representatives from newly contacted civilizations observed with keen interest. Not how we imagined our return to the stars, is it? Came a familiar voice. Elena turned to find Sanjay Kapoor, now well into his 80s, approaching with the aid of a mobility assistance device. Despite his age, his eyes remained sharp and perceptive. Better, Elena replied simply. They wanted us to wait 15,000 years. It took us 20 to change the galaxy instead. Sanjay chuckled. Our aggressive tendencies served us well in the end. Not just aggression, Elena corrected him. Determination, adaptability, and something the Assembly never understood, the ability to forge unity from diversity. The chamber lights dimmed, signaling the start of the historic session. On the central platform, Marcus Reeves stood alongside Zeravesh, Talus, and representatives from 3 other species, the newly elected Conclave Leadership Council. That's the difference, Elena said softly as she watched her son prepare to address the gathered delegates. The Assembly feared difference. We embraced it. The conclave fell silent as Marcus began to speak, his voice carrying across the vast chamber without technological enhancement, a human gesture of respect for the momentous occasion. Today marks not the victory of one approach over another, but the beginning of a new understanding. We gather not as conquerors and conquered, not as exiles and jailers, but as equals with different gifts to bring to our shared future. As applause filled the chamber, Elena felt a peculiar sense of completion. The Assembly had judged humanity too volatile for the stars. In doing so, they had created exactly the force needed to transform the galaxy. Humanity had not just returned to the stars. They had remade them.